Okay, we're live.
Yeah, Chairman, you can start now, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the meeting of the Planning Policy Committee held virtually today on Wednesday, the 27th of January 2021. As I indicated earlier, we only have a fairly simple agenda tonight. So to start with, may I have any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chairman. No apologies have been received.
Thank you. The minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of December 2020, which should be attached. Are there any comments regarding their accuracy? Councillor Maxwell?
I don't know whether I'm allowed to ask a question.
No, you're only allowed to comment on the accuracy or otherwise of the minutes.
No.
So if your question is regarding the accuracy of the minutes, then that's okay. You can't do matters arising.
I suppose it's accurate. It's whether it was actually done. That was my question.
Well, is it something that was said would be done in the minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. But it was something that would be done at a future date, not something that had been done.
It said it's something that would be done at a future date. Well, it didn't say future date. It just said that something would be done, but it didn't say when.
Okay, I don't think that's a comment on the accuracy of the minutes.
No, Chairman.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments regarding the accuracy of the minutes? Okay. May
I was acceptance, Chairman.
Thank you. And may I have a seconder to accept the minutes? Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Are there any against? Thank you very much. That's minutes carried or noted. So, agenda item 3. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, I did not hear anything. Agenda item 4. Are there any questions from members under Council Procedure Rule 10.3?
No questions have been received, Chairman.
Thank you. Well, we've got through 4 of the 5 items on the agenda. We now move to agenda item 5, which is the pre-submission of the East Northamptonshire Local Plan Part 2. We have 2 members of the public who would like to speak. So welcome to both of you. And so Councillor Tony Robinson, are you're here and ready to roll?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Excellent. Well, Councillor Robinson, good evening. Welcome to the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
As always, we are very interested in what you have to say, and you have 3 minutes to do so. The floor's yours,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you. Well, as Councillor Clark will explain in a few minutes, the events of the last year and this plan have left Oundle open to gross overdevelopment. What, therefore, are the consequences that we should be looking for in this document? There are several, but I want to talk about one, the highways infrastructure. We must stop all future housing developments until we have an adequate road system in place. Most of you know that Oundle, it's an old market town and has grown around an ancient road system. All of the principal routes take you through the town centre. Every one of these principal communication routes and the rat runs are littered with essential resident parking. Yet there's no mention of the road structure limitations in these pages. In the report, we get things like Oundle is the main market town and service centre for the rural north of the district. The town underwent significant growth in the 11th and 12th centuries. At one point, Oundle is likened to the closely related Peterborough. What planet is the author living on? Peterborough was built around a massive dual carriageway road system. Is the plan so badly out of date that we're better forgotten? Oundle residents have asked for a new development that was small and spread around the town, and this is not what's happened. Compared to Oundle, with similar population size is Thrapston. Thrapston has 3 free-running routes out onto the A605. Oundle, by contrast, has 2 slow, narrow, single-file routes, both controlled with traffic lights. All of the villages around Thrapston have faster links to the trunk roads, so don't have to travel through the town centre. For Oundle, the A427 goes right through the middle of the town, and we are the principal exit route for many of the surrounding villages. Everything comes through our town centre, yet not a word about it. In Oundle, we worked hard to develop a housing plan based on the best routes and in total respect of the surrounding communities. In return, we've got nothing. All the consultation input has been ignored, and developers have been granted outline planning permission for large developments ahead of any review of this plan. Since we cannot do anything about the damage already done, we have to ask you to prevent anything getting worse. If this plan is to go ahead, we ask you to remove the housing allocation for Oundle, since they are unsafe and risk the rejection of the whole plan. Then add a clause that no further housing in the area can be considered without the inclusion of an adequate link road system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. And your remarks have, of course, been heard. Now we move to Councillor Ian Clark. Are you here, Mr. Clark? Councillor Clark?
I hope I am.
Yeah, that's great. We can hear you. So once again, you two have 3 minutes, and we'll be interested to hear what you have to say, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The examiner of the Oundle Neighbourhood Plan explained that it failed for 2 reasons: consultation and site selection process. The plan in front of you this evening will be examined in the same way and has exactly the same failings: consultation and site selection. Consultation has shown, and is likely to show again, that the sites in the plan are not those Oundle residents, whose plan this is, believe is right for their district, and consultation will surely cause the alternative site owners to raise objections which will demonstrate that the site selection process has been carried out so badly as to cause the plan to possibly fail. Oundle Town Council have been very clear that they want and support a local plan to protect the district from overdevelopment. We work with ENC in the development of a neighbourhood plan, only to be told at the 11th hour that it will be unsafe, and ENC officers decided to go their own way. 2 years ago, your officers were made aware of the errors in their plan, for example, the non-existent school on one rejected site, the non-existent historic monument on another, but nothing has been altered. Other important sites were rejected for obscure reasons, for example, claiming one developer was not interested in continuing because he failed to respond to a single email from a contractor, and that another site connected visually and by paths to Oundle on 3 sides was disjoined from the town. Again, OTC has made your officers aware of the errors, but nothing has been changed. The same erroneous document is submitted in the pack that you have before you this evening. To the uninformed observer, it might look as if the recent submission of outline planning applications on the recommended sites previously was almost stimulated by this defective site selection process, making the site recommendations in the final plan a fait accompli, which in effect short-circuits this supposedly democratic process. These premature applications were considered in isolation from the plan, meaning the balanced benefits to Oundle and its surrounding hinterland of alternative developments has not been considered, which surely must be the point of strategic planning. We're now left with 2 bad sites in the plan in front of you, and at least 2 more that will have to be granted planning permission in the near future. The best result this evening would be to accept the plan with the Oundle housing allocations left in abeyance as properly, rather than pick up this mess. If you accept the plan as it is, then it is likely the whole plan may be rejected by the planning inspector or above, because it has failed to prove it is positively prepared or justified by failing to consider reasonable alternatives. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Clark. And again, your remarks have been noted. Okay, we now move to the actual substantive item of the agenda, which is the pre-submission of the East Northamptonshire local plan. You have all, I hope, received the actual report on this item, which was sent separately, and obviously the supporting documentation, which is the large pack, plus the update report, and plus the schedule of proposed changes. So Richard's going to, I believe, take us through the report, and over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to provide a brief summary of the report in front of you tonight on the submission plan. My colleagues Anne Dix and Mike Burton are going to very briefly run through the sections of the plan. That will be a brief sort of summary of the changes that have occurred in those particular chapters, and give you some concentration on those issues during the presentation, which, as I say, won't take too long to go through. In terms of the report itself, this report seeks to agree the pre-submission of the East Northamptonshire Local Plan Part 2, and that's for Regulation 19 consultation, which is a formal consultation of the plan. Following that consultation period, it would also be to agree the submission of the plan to the Secretary of State, and that will be for independent examination, which we anticipate taking place later on this year. So the Regulation 19 pre-submission stage is the final stage of the plan before it passes to the Secretary of State for examination, and it involves the plan itself being taken forward as the Council's plan. So if approved tonight, that will be the plan that the Council has backed, and that plan will start to take on additional weight in terms of applications, particularly where there are no objections to particular policies. So tonight's decision will change the weight on the plan and will be an important decision to make. Through the Regulation 19 period of consultation, interested persons can make representations on the document, but they have to be based on the soundness of the document. So there are criteria tests against that, which are set up in the submission form that we've produced online for representations to be made through. It's not a question of saying I don't like this or I don't like that. It has to be based on consistency with policy, for example, but those tests of soundness and how the representation would make that plan sound. So this plan sets out to make an appropriate strategy for the district moving forward up to 2031. And it's the role of the Reg 19 to seek reps on that soundness and that strategy that the plan proposes. So in your report, paragraphs 2.3 to 2.7, effectively they summarise the milestones, the extensive consultation, workshops and engagement that we've had throughout the periods of consultation, and there have been 3 or 4 separate consultations on this particular plan to reach the stage that we present to you tonight. The local plan itself comprises of a number of documents. So along with the report, you have 5 appendices, and they provide not just the plan, its text and its policies, but also supporting documents which are required to be submitted to the Secretary of State along with the plan itself, and they would include statutory documents such as the habitats regs, the sustainability appraisal, but also the extensive evidence base that has led to the policy proposals that you have in front of you with the plan tonight. In addition to that, there are further requirements that are expected to be submitted with the plan, and they would include, for example, viability reports, etc., etc. So there's a whole wealth of information, background papers explaining the policies which you've had access to with your reports, some through electronic links, and that all adds towards the final strategy and policies of the plan. So that's the evidence base. Appendix 5 contains a schedule of proposed changes. There are a number of pages to that. Just to briefly explain those to members, what they are sort of the written changes, if you like. You recall that we've reported back to a series of planning policy committee meetings over the last year or so, with all the detailed representations carried out through that we've assessed through the consultation, and those were all agreed in principle one way or the other by the planning policy committee. But those detailed changes to the plan, whilst the officers' recommendations were agreed, the actual wordings of those in some places were, to be made following those meetings. So that schedule of changes, if you like, is an audit of what's been done since the draft plan and how that's changed. My colleagues Mike Burton and Anne Dix will run through some of the major changes very briefly on each section in a moment, as I've suggested. In line with the recommendations of the plan, of the submission plan report, it's also intended to undertake Regulation 19. That's one of the proposals, and that would be a statutory 6-week consultation, which we propose to begin on the 5th of February through to the 19th of March, which would allow the submission of the plan to the Secretary of State by the 31st of March this year. So in 2.11 of your report, it does talk a little bit more about what we can do following the submission. It is a very different, following the Regulation 19 stage. It is a different stage in that we don't report back the representations that are made to the plan. They are summarised and they are sent through to the Planning Inspectorate with the statement of consultation. So your second, I think it's the second recommendation on the plan, seeks the agreement tonight of the submission following the period of consultation on the Reg 19, with the caveat that if a significant issue arises, which we don't anticipate, that of course we would consider whether we needed to bring that back to committee before progressing to submission. As a state, it's an extensively consulted on plan with an extensive evidence base. We brought it to you in a number of stages, and I would hope that we don't receive anything through the Reg 19 that would cause us to do that, because that would of course delay the submission of the plan. So moving then to the recommendations of the report chair, they're set out very clearly in the report, I think, to approve the plan for Regulation 19, to agree its submission, and importantly, I think, to delegate any further minor changes that are called non-material, but there are a number of sort of presentational, grammatical changes, etc., which can be made to the plan or the supporting documents, which would include, for example, the any master plans or any supporting documents that required further change, but we wouldn't make significant changes to those. If we were to do that, we would need to go out and consult on those significant changes. That's up to you as a committee tonight, of course, to determine how we move forward. Very briefly then, Chair, that's it in terms of the report. If I was able to pass on to my colleague Mike Burton to summarise the sections of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Richard. That was a very clear report, succinct, and I think you said all that is necessary to say on the report. So thank you very much for that clear description. Mike, yes, please.
Okay, thank you, David. Anne and I will be talking through this, but I'll just take you through the introductory sections. That's number 1 to 3. I think briefly, there's obviously includes a foreword which councillors Brackenbury and North, we would require confirmation that they'd be happy to endorse the wording.
Right.
Statutory requirements, what we call the Big 5, that's sustainability appraisal, habitats regs assessment, quality impact assessment, and lastly, which Richard already mentioned.
Mike, could you stop a moment? I'm afraid you're breaking up rather, so we can't really understand you.
I'm sorry. I'll try my best. I'm hearing everyone clearly. So okay. Okay. So I mentioned the 5 sort of supporting statutory submission documents. That's sustainability appraisal, habitat regs assessment, health impact assessment, equalities impact assessment, and lastly, as Rich has already mentioned, statement of consultation. Really, I just want to, on the first introductory sections, they also include the vision and outcomes as well. But really, I think the key changes since the first draft, there's some explanatory text, e.g. respect to the duty to cooperate, health impact assessment.
Right, I'm sorry.
We've been engaged.
Mike, I'm sorry, but you are really breaking up. You are difficult to understand.
Shall I switch my camera?
Yeah,
Chair,
do that.
could I suggest that we go on to Anne can pick up the 2 of the chapters that Anne would cover, and then perhaps come back to Mike and see if we can get a better connection.
Yeah, well, let Mike have a go without his camera on.
Okay.
Shall I carry on? I'm nearly finished. Apologies. I think critically, though, we've been closely working with Natural England, and we've had to introduce some additional explanation regarding the special protection area in Ramsar site. So that's quite a key addition.
Sorry, Mike, this isn't working.
No, apologies. Shall I hand over to Anne then?
Did you move closer to the mic just now?
I'm not sure. I'm leaning forward. Is that any better?
No, it's better.
Okay, I'll try and. I say I can hear everyone. I've got a crisp picture of all the participants. I'm a little bit. Apologies there.
Chair,
it's not really usable.
Mike is breaking up quite a bit, but if I could suggest, maybe if Anne does her sections now, if you try a different room, it might be that you can get a better connection. I don't know. Everything else seemed clear to me, but it is interrupting. It's breaking up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move to Anne, because really I can't think that what Mike's said really has gone across, so we need to more or less start again. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. I'll plough on. I'm unfortunately picking up at chapter 5, natural capital. The changes and the updates to this section are mainly factual. Are you all able to hear me okay? Is it
yes.
Good. Okay, good. Additional wording has been added to address the representations received from statutory consultees, members of the public. Natural capital is defined as the world's stocks of natural assets to include geology, soil, air, water and all living things. So the importance of natural capital is recognised in the JCS Policy 1, and to fulfil the presumption in favour of sustainable development, all new development should ideally secure net overall gains in natural capital or net environmental enhancement. In practice, this section 5 natural capital, delivers the policy framework and criteria to delivering new open spaces, the green infrastructure or local green space to support development. The emphasis is on all new development to connect these GI, the green infrastructure corridors, as well as providing playing pitches, walking and cycling routes, and recreational space for the use of infants through all the ages, up to older people. Policies EN7 and EN8 are project-specific policies and deal with delivering GI corridors such as future phases of the Greenway, Chelveston Road and the new SEN school. Tables 6, 7 and 8 in this section will set out standards for developer contributions for both on and off-site provision of GI for the Greenway and for other networks. Table 9 sets out playing pitch demand calculators as indicated in the KKP playing pitch strategy assessment report. Sorry, that's a mouthful. So moving on into section 6, which is social capital. This chapter has not changed dramatically either. The numbering of the policies has changed and the other updates are mainly factual. Sorry, people trying to get our attention.
Yeah, okay, I've got two speakers at the moment. Councillor Boto, please.
Sorry, Chair, I put my asked my question way back when.
Tony, we can't hear you. You're clear, but you're very, very quiet. Could you move me closer to your microphone, please?
Get inside the computer. Is that better?
Yeah, that's fine.
Fine. Yes, I was trying to speak to Richard after Richard finished, just to check I've got the right paper. In the update sheet, which came out today, with additional amendments on them. The first section was various minor factual updates. It states there that they will be addressed under recommendation 4 of the local plan. Whereas I can only see three recommendations in 13.1 of the plan. Am I looking at the right original paper, or does the recommendation only have three recommendations? Does the paper only have 3 recommendations on it?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think that it's meant to be regulation, the recommendation 3, but I just seek Richard's confirmation.
Yeah, apologies, Chair. That's correct. It's recommendation 3.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
That's the first type minor amendment we've picked up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peacock, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of clarity points, really, Anne. On page 2 of the natural capital, right at the top, it said Yardley Whittlewood Ridge. I've never heard of that, referred to that part of Rushden before. Chelveston, Newton, Bromswold and Avenue Road. I'm just want to check that it's the correct name, because I've never ever heard of that. Right. Being called that right at the top, 91.
Yes, I see that, 91. To be honest, I don't know where that actually came from. We just have this list of the areas. I think Mike may be able to help if we can hear him. Mike?
Yeah, Mike, let's have a go.
Can you hear me any better?
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
Yes.
that's good.
That's a bit better. Oh, good. A few. Yes. Yeah, those are the names of character areas in the Natural England national designated national character areas. So that's where it's derived from. I think it's because that part of the district is obviously is on the edge of that particular designated character area. That's where that arises. It's purely factual. It's cross-referenced to Natural England's assessment. That's what it is.
Not a local one that we know of. And just one other point on the Greenway 5.15, you refer to the Greenway Forward Plan 2019 to 2024, and then at the bottom of the page you reference it to the website Going Forward Plan, but it's the different dates, so those dates need to be the same, I assume. So that we get the most.
Yes, I think that's to do with that. That's because of our website. I think.
Yeah, so it just needs
to be labelled.
Uploaded, but it's not actually the heading on the web page hasn't been updated.
All right,
so,
just clarification again, so that people get the right information, the most up to date at the time.
I noticed that, but yeah, if you click on the link, you would find it would take you to the correct document.
That's all right. I just wanted to double check.
It's the way our website works.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Got as far as social capital from Anne, but Mike, since you are back with us,
Councillor Bowles has got his hand waving.
Oh, Councillor Bowles, I beg your pardon. Yes, of course, Jake.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, on EN7, this came up during our discussions 3 years ago, I guess. I have no understanding of any link between Brigstock Country Park and Oundle, nor between Oundle and Great Gidding via Ashton Wold. I think those are very historical. and not in any way connected with the current Greenway. And I think that they have basically just disappeared into the ether, and I don't think they should be in EN7. On the same page, talking of the Greenway, one of the biggest single issues that we have with the Greenway in the north is crossing the A605. And I do think that some reference should be made to that, because we've had quotes, if I loosely call them that, for a flyover or a bridge so that people could cross over the A605 in the past. But there isn't actually a way other than some subterranean tunnel in Elton, to get from one side of the road to the other. It is a major barrier for the Greenway, which does not want to have children and bicycles and horses mixing with high-speed traffic. And whilst on the subject of traffic, and this may not be the right place, but I don't know where it would go, I did not know that Tony Robinson was going to talk about traffic, but we do have in the north of the district very significant problems with traffic in all the villages in Arundel. We have the pub was damaged in Barnwell because an Arctic truck was trying to get round a bridge. We have lorries coming through over weight limit or through weight limit areas in Cotterstock, in Milford, in Aldwinkle, in Arundel, where there are weight limits on the bridge, Marketplace, West Street and North Street. And I believe that when going into the North Northamptonshire, we should be going in with a suggestion or a plan of some sort of traffic routing to stop HGVs using the 427 and any of the other village roads between, if you like, a box between the A47, A43, A14, A1, and making them go round the outside of the box and only allowing HGVs to come in who are servicing businesses and properties within the zone. Because the police are not interested in enforcement. In fact, I have in writing from a policeman here encouragement for a local, well, actually a Ipswich driver to go through a weight limit, 7.5 ton weight limit with his 35 ton truck, because it saves him going round. And that is absolutely ridiculous. And I think that, I don't know whether this is the right actual section to have it in, but I do think that we as a district council should put something forward about how we would like to manage the heavy goods vehicles that are coming through our area at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I mean, I think you do make an important point. I don't think it's for tonight or this plan as such, but I do think you make an important point about HGV movements. It's been a problem, and I didn't realise that somebody'd taken out the Montague Arms. That's bad. But yeah, your point's well made. Okay, so Michael, if you would like to quickly take us through
Sorry, can I just come back on Councillor Volter's comments about the Greenway? I think we would like these things leaving in for the time being, because going to Unitary, the Greenway will be spreading into all other areas of Unitary to link up other existing cycleways as well. So I hear what you're saying about roads, but crossings and things can be put in. We are working on different things, so I wouldn't want it eliminating the option altogether.
Yeah, and if they're ancient routes that have existed many years ago, hundreds of years ago, I mean, there's no harm in mentioning them, even if they aren't at the moment practicable.
Chairman, I didn't say take out the A605. I said put it in, because I think that's a very big issue for the Greenway that we need to resolve so the Greenway can operate.
Okay. Right, Councillor North, please.
Yeah, good habit. The reason I raised this, Chair, is because obviously we're early into the meeting. It's just an assumption I've got, and I'm just checking with yourself, and it may save a lot of time. I mean, some very valid points raised there by Councillor Vols, and obviously it created more raised hands. The concern or question I've got, Chair, is, as we've had all these sections, and I'm not saying it was wrong or right, and I'm just making a general point, Chair, just from my understanding. But as we've obviously had these over the last few years, all these papers come to us in different formats, and I'm obviously debated them. And the fact that we've gone out to consultation with these, I'm making the assumption that certainly within the EN boxes at this stage, because we've consulted on them at various stages, we can't alter them tonight. Right. We have gone past that point previously through all the meetings we've had in the past few years, and any suggested alteration to the EN numbers would actually cause us in a serious delay, and that's not what tonight's about, because we've passed that opportunity. My understanding is, Chair, that if anybody's got some real objections, and again, I'm not disagreeing with Councillor Voles, that they then now have to be directed to the inquiry, not for tonight to change, because I don't want that misunderstanding this early on in the meeting, that if my assumption's right, that we can't spend all the night debating each of the EN numbers, because we've had that opportunity before we consulted. Just wanted to clarify that point.
Yeah, you are right. We cannot make any material changes to the plan, or at least if we do, then we have to reconsult and submit the plan, or somebody has to submit the plan at a future date. So, you know, we have to accept this plan or not. Richard, I think you wanted to speak.
Thank you, Chair. First of all,
Richard,
Rupert,
for Reichhold, not I said Richard, not Rupert, I'm afraid.
In that case, can you put me in the queue?
Yeah, by all means. It's Councillor Maxwell and then yourself, but Richard first, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think just to add to what Councillor North has raised, I mean, a number of these changes that are detailed in the schedule, they are based on recommendations and for consistency what the Planning Policy Committee has addressed in the past. So none of these proposals are something that we're looking at would be not in line, if you see what I mean, with the recommendations you've made in the past. So each individual member may have some additional comments to make, but that's not necessarily in line with what the recommendations were from previous committees. So, you know, I think we've got to be careful about how consistent we're being. If you go back through the audit of all the recommendations and what we've arrived at through various meetings through 2019 and 2020, you'll see that we built the plan up based on those. You know, there is the opportunity to make modifications to the plan, which I was going to sort of mention briefly when we've gone through the sections. But what we would say is that if there are any items of significance that don't fall within recommendation 3, then, you know, it's not that we could go straight to submission. We would really need to consult on those if we're making changes to policies and proposals. And as I say, in terms of consistency, I think you've got to think very carefully about what those points would be. We have picked up on amendments and we've proposed these, and we've got an addendum tonight as well. But it is that sort of tension, if you like, between changing the plan further and saying, look, this is the council's plan, it's ready to submit. Representations can still be put forward at the Regulation 19 consultation stage if you think that plan is unsound. But I mean, are we looking at soundness issues here, or are we looking at minor issues that can be changed? That said, if you're proposing an issue that can be changed, how consistent is it with what's already been agreed through previous Planning Policy Committee meetings? You know, there's 120 plus pages there, and I would need to go through those to actually respond in direct, provide a direct response to some of the questions. Yes, we can look at those, and hopefully if the resolution of the committee is as proposed tonight, then officers will have time to go through and agree amendments that are non-materialistic, if you like, or not strategic to the plan, with both the chair and the vice chair of the Planning Policy Committee, along with the head of service. So, you know, that's a built-in measure before we go out to Reg 19, so we have the most up-to-date version. But you know, I think just be careful in terms of some of the issues, because, you know, obviously we can look at those, but we would need to look at the consistency. I just wanted to mention that, Chair, because, you know, we haven't arrived at this plan just based on proposals without an audit of where we've got to. Thank you.
No,
thank you for that, because it was starting to concern me, Chair, that we were heading down a path that we probably shouldn't be. So I was just checking on that.
Yeah, we're not in a position to re-debate the whole plan tonight. And with that borne in mind, I've got two more speakers at this point. Councillor Maxwell, please.
My point is, looking at table 9 on page 10, where it actually lays out the future of what sort of sporting facilities are actually required. My question is that where you got north and south, I take it that's north and south of East Northants. Is there a possibility of having a column which actually says what we've actually got now, or is that not relevant?
Well, it's a demand calculator, so it's not. We haven't got a sort of list of what we currently have, but it has been taken. What we currently have has been taken into consideration.
Right.
So again, we're not going. We cannot do amendments to the document right now and introduce additional material. Councillor Maxwell, were you still wanting to speak?
Sorry, I automatically muted myself. Yeah, I'm just interested, looking at this chart, how it actually fits in the future, and where we are not necessarily meeting the demand. That was my concern.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's explained that it is a demand calculator, and it is explained also in 5.35, the Northamptonshire Physical Activity and Sports Framework. So some of that is the evidence base that goes onto that particular item. Okay, Councillor Reichhold, please. Good evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
We can.
Good. 2 points. First of all, I strongly support all the points that Councillor Vowles has made, in particular about the need for a cattle creep or an overbridge over the A605 as part of the longer-term Greenway project. I suggest that adding a paragraph recording these points should not delay submission of the plan, and it'd help perhaps if they were reinforced come the time by written representations at the examination public. My second point is the ongoing problem of, frankly, illegal heavy goods vehicle traffic through Oundle by vehicles which are not within the law delivering or collecting goods from Oundle premises. This is something I struggled with when I was a county councillor and got nowhere. Northants police are indeed undermanned and overstretched. Therefore, we're up against the problem longer term that only a constable in uniform may require a lorry to stop and answer questions of where are you going and why. So longer term, and this again should not hold up submission of the plan. If we put in a paragraph of some sort, and Mr. Chairman, you're shaking your head vigorously. May I remind you, with utmost respect, you are not a planner. A paragraph stating a desirability is not an actual requirement, but merely a pointer for debate and action subsequently. With respect, now. Longer term, it'd be worth working in Northants Police to somehow find a couple of special constables based in Oundle and therefore working in Oundle only, who could do a degree of enforcement within the law. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Councillor. And indeed, I'm not a planner, but I can introduce one who is. And Richard, would you like to respond to Councillor Reichhold?
Thank you, David. Yes, Councillor Reichhold, I understand the sentiment behind the proposal that that you've just mentioned. I mean, it is difficult because, you know, there are implications of putting statements in plans. There are costs to providing overbridges that are very significant, and it's a question of, you know, you can be aspirational, but plans have to be deliverable as well. And if you put a statement in that has quite, you know, a very little chance of coming forward because, you know, to fund that, how would that come about through development? Well, there's no further development than that currently allocated in the plan, and for those sites to be viable, they certainly wouldn't be funding something like that. It also means that if you're providing sort of major infrastructure of that sort of magnitude, if you like, you really need to look at how that would come forward, because this plan has a
tiddler.
Pardon?
Not major. Christ almighty, it's a tiddler. A cattle creeper.
Yeah. Well, it might. Yes, I know where you're coming from, but even tiddler bridges really do add up in terms of the costs. We've looked at this in terms of Rushden East and the potential of over bridges over the A6, and we know that, you know, to be engineered and everything has to be done to specifications, that they're a lot more expensive than we all think, and that, you know, that is the case. But it's the justification for those, really. I mean, even if we were to put it in, and to be honest, it is something that could be raised by yourself through the Regulation 19 anyway. That could still be done, because it's not just a case of putting something in. That has to be part of the infrastructure plan, because there's a local infrastructure plan that sits, you know, I talked about all the document appendices, and one of those documents will be the local infrastructure plan. So it's all the things we need to ensure that the development and the proposals are backed up by all that necessary infrastructure, and then that's looked at in terms of the viability of the plan. So I know it's made, you know, it sort of says, well, that's a good thing to do, and yes, I wouldn't disagree with you, but there are implications of putting something in at this stage in the plan. You know, it's quite late in the day to be putting in something of that magnitude, but that's not to say you couldn't suggest that through the Regulation 19. Likewise, if the committee decided that was an appropriate implication, then we could do that, but we would have to look at the consequences of that in terms of, would we still be able to submit the plan? What changes are we making to the plan? Do we feel we would want to go out and consult on issues again? Or are there statements in the plan that we can't support? We would have to have a look at all that. So, you know, I think I can't really say any more on that. It's not that I don't support that proposal. It's just, you know, looking at the implications of it, really.
Okay.
It's also something, if I could add, Chair, it's also something that, you know, planning goes on. So a strategic plan review will take place this year, and unless you're looking for grant funding for something like that, then future development within the area could look at the potential for overbridges and stuff. But it does depend on, you know, the relevance of the development to that. I suggest we'd probably be looking at some independent funding, but we could do that outside of the plan anyway.
Okay. I mean, if you've noted the chat function, it's been pointed out that the Rushden Lakes overbridge cost approximately £1.2 million.
Yes, it's probably a bigger bridge than Rupert's referring to, but
so even a little bridge is not a cheap operation. Anyway, thank you, Councillor Jenny, please. You've been very patient.
Two or three things, Chairman. Just to put Councillor Maxwell at rest, before she joined this committee, there was a report commissioned which dealt with all the sports provision for the whole of the district, and all the answers that she's looking for are in there, so I suggest you go and have a look at that. Secondly, I'm sitting listening to the comments of Oundle members with regards to traffic. I think if they'd been in on the unitary conversation this afternoon on the finances for everybody, they would have been aware that there are certain things that are being looked at to go forward as far as the infrastructure is concerned, and I do believe that the improvements of the A605 are on that list. How high up they are or how low down they are, I don't know. but I do know that the A605 has been discussed and presumably will continue to be discussed. And just to reinforce the leader's point, really, we are getting a little bit away from the plan. And I can see us sitting here at midnight gone at the moment, the way this is going. So if people could really confine themselves to the document as it stands, it would be helpful.
Well, and remembering that we have all this document has been extensively consulted upon and has been approved previously by planning policy.
Absolutely, Chairman. I would say that the minor modifications and things like that that have been raised, and I know Councillor Mercer has done her usual very thorough typo exercise, which I'm actually quite disappointed that the officers hadn't done that before it got sent out. But hey ho, it's a good job at least one member reads it thoroughly, and perhaps we could just crack on.
Well, okay. Well, nobody else has indicated they wish to speak at the moment, so let's crack on. I think, Michael, you were going to do the introductory section one, and were you doing section 4, the spatial development as well?
Hi, can you hear me okay, committee?
Yes, you're great.
Okay, that's brilliant. Okay, so apologies about that before. As I say, I've talked about the introductory sections and critically the role of Natural England. We've had to put quite a bit of additional guidance into those introductory sections to satisfy Natural England, so that's very important. I'm going to talk briefly now about section 4, which is the spatial development strategy. And what policy EN1 does, it builds upon that's already set out in the joint course strategy at table 1 and policy 11, and it provides a rural settlement hierarchy and differentiates between individual villages. The 8 largest villages are designated larger villages. The majority of villages are smaller villages, and there are also a small number of restraint villages which are treated as if they're open countryside. The spatial strategy also includes criteria for settlement boundaries, and really on this particular section there are actually no significant changes from the first draft plan back in November 2018. It's really just detailed policy wording to sort of beef up the policy and provide additional robustness. And there's also some further information around functional relationships between villages and their neighbouring urban areas. So those are the key changes there. Any thoughts or questions on section 4? That's the spatial strategy.
Yeah, I would only say that it's good that the settlement boundaries are criteria based rather than lines on maps, because I remember we got into a lot of pickle last time we had this discussion. So Councillor North, please.
Thank you, Chair. And as you know, not looking to change anything or make any suggested changes. It's a point of clarification from Mike, and it's certainly around this settlement boundaries and the built-up area, the countryside, and the linear aspect. Now, I have not looked at all the plans accompanying the document, and it may be in the Rushden neighbourhood plan, but I'm just in relation to this, and it's a question, not looking for an alteration. It's just a question on how we treat the addition of the Bedford Road in the housing supply addition that we're looking at, and we have agreed to include this in the area to meet our housing supply. In not drawing a boundary, and I'll say I'm not questioning the policy. It's just a general question why I got the opportunity in relation to this. It's in relation to how we. Obviously we're looking to have 450 houses as to meet our housing supply on Bedford Road, Newton Road in Rushden. How, without a boundary line, how we prevent that expanse up to the deputy leader's house in a short space of time. Not speaking that he's concerned about it, Chair, but you know, without drawing a boundary line, perhaps Mike could answer how we stop a rapid expansion of those 450 to 4,000 houses overnight, and not alarming people on Newton Road, but just how we protect it in the plan period without how you explain this part of it to me. That'd be helpful anyway.
But thank you, Councillor North, and that is a very, very good question. With reference to the Rushton neighbourhood plan, that does actually include a settlement boundary, but you're quite correct, this site would fall outside. I think in practical terms, and this is the problem with settlement boundaries, and they're not sufficiently flexible. In this case, we are proposing to allocate this land. We're not proposing to allocate more land. It's a greenfield site. It is obviously a greenfield site to meet the strategic requirement. That's the way the plan's been designed. So obviously, if we were to looking at sort of significant further development, I think we would be well placed to resist that. Yeah, there would be not a justification as further greenfield development beyond what we're already seeking to commit outside of a review of the local plan or the joint course strategy, and that's the forum where we wish to see that happen. I mean, to an extent, that's how we found ourselves in the past, but no, I think we're well placed because we're clearly allocating a greenfield site. So yeah, and that's how the plan. Obviously, beyond that, it's open countryside. It's designated as the rural area of Rushton, so the rural policies would apply. The neighbourhood plan is there as well as an additional backstop in that regard. So I think we're well served in terms of policy direction and protection there.
Thank you for that, Jan. I appreciate. I felt it was relevant due to the addition of that land within what we're achieving. So thank you for that.
Okay, brilliant.
Can I just?
Well, I've got two speakers.
All right, sorry. Okay.
If it was a quick interjection on what's literally.
It was just to support Councillor North's comments, really, because I think the concern is that we've got, as Rushton is identified as a growth town. We seem to be getting everything, and we need to make sure there is a position where we can stop and leave some rural open space. So Mike's just confirmed that for me, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Maxwell, please.
I've just got 2 points. The first point I'd like to make is on the first page in 4.3, where you've actually put about significant strategy commitments such as Rushton East. You then go on about Rushton Gateway. I think that you've actually put will be delivered in accordance with approval of master plans required by relevant policies and joint core strategy, which is fine, but I think it also should be delivered if anything was going to happen within the Rushton Lakes roundabout, which is being remodelled. Is that not something that should be included? And the second point I wish to make is on page 4, and it's where you've got table 4, function, roles of rural settlements. You've got Crow Hill in Earthlinborough, but actually what's happening with Crow Hill in Earthlinborough is it's become separated, which could happen the same in Rushton. It's become separated from Earthlinborough itself, and there's a road built through it, but Crow Hill is sort of left out on the limb.
Yes.
So I'm not sure how that fits in. So my question is on the first one, do you not think that the roundabout at Rushton Lakes should be included in that statement?
Okay.
Since they are remodelling it.
I don't, and the strategic commitments such as Rushton East and future development phases around Rushton Lakes will be delivered in accordance with approved master plans as required by relevant policies and with JCS.
Yeah, but that was before they actually now realise, Highways England, that the roundabout has to be remodelled. They know that and they need to do it. There's no quick fix, but I do think it should be either in brackets or alongside Rushton Gateway.
Okay. Richard or Michael, or anyone want to pick up on this?
I suppose what the point of the paragraph is that the master plans would be developed with the existing commitments. If things change, then a lot of these policies are based in the strategic plan. So what the local plan is doing is putting the local detail on those. Again, it's a similar point. If different infrastructure requirements are being brought in, then that is very much, it's not within the remit of this plan to start changing the infrastructure requirements. I mean, that is something which would have been agreed through the strategic plan, and the development details are being now put through the Part 2 plan. We're not changing tact in that respect.
Okay.
We've engaged with Highways England and all of the statutory partners in terms of the policies. If that's the case, then I'm sure they would have put a representation forward on the plan. That, having said that, though, Councillor Maxwell, obviously it does come back to the strategic plan again. So, I understand what you're saying, but it's very difficult to go back and undo that. It's a case of we are where we are. That has been agreed. It's been through a democratic process and based on the requirements at that point in time. It's not to say things don't change over time, but it may be if that development has mitigated its impact, but there's still a problem on the network, then that's something that Highways England would probably need to look at in terms of its future planning for the area. And we know that does happen outside of developments anyway. It's not just about developments coming in and mitigating, because obviously over time traffic levels increase and congestion levels seem to increase as well. So, they will review the issues on their network over time, and it may be that something like that is looked at independently. But I think we can only base it on the evidence that we've got at the time. So
what's this report here? Was number 4, this particular section, was it done like 3 years ago?
Well, from our point of view, it would have been done, probably. I mean, a lot of this has evolved, so it would have started off about 3 years ago.
Yeah. So whereas 3 years ago you didn't see the relevance of what they were trying to do last year. Yeah, I understand.
I think it would have evolved, but what we have done though is continue to consult at different stages of the plan. So the very last time we would have done that, I think would have been an opportunity, but it probably does go back slightly longer than that, because as I say, it comes out of the strategic plan. That said, obviously when planning applications come in, they have to be assessed against the plan policies, but they also, at that point in time when the planning application comes in, further representations from the likes of Highway England would be consulted and they would respond.
And
so it does continue to evolve, yes.
Yeah. And just quickly, going to Crow Hill in table 4, where you've actually got limited community infrastructure and facilities, which obviously I do agree, but that part of the problem there is the A6. So you've got the A6 going through Earthlinborough, which is now divided 2 parts of the town, really, which is not going to be dissimilar to the A6 going through Rushton if it's not correctly done.
Yeah, so, but it's been like that for many years, and that's why Crow Hill is identified as an urban outlier. It is divided from Earthlinborough. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I know.
There's nothing we can do about it.
No. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's correct, Chair. That's why we've looked at it separately from Earthlinborough, because we feel that there is that disconnection is the wrong word, but it needs to be looked at differently in terms of policy to recognise that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lewis, please. He was here a minute ago.
Thank
Oh,
you
here
very
he
much, Chairman. Well, a couple of very quick points. I courted my wife in Crowhill, so
Yeah.
you know it's as it was many, many years ago, at least 57 years ago, or even more now. So I shouldn't worry about that too much, Dorothy. I would have thought under 4.3 the terms strategic commitments and future developments would cover all the problems that Councillor Maxwell's been talking about when these things come up later. But my real question is, which very simple question, in table 2, under growth town ration, it says to provide the focus for major coordinated regeneration and growth in employment, housing, retail and higher order facilities. It's a bit of like semantics really. Does facilities cover things like infrastructure? Is that the intention of that word facilities? It just...
Michael?
Yeah, thank you. In answer to Councillor Lewis's comments, yes, it does relate to infrastructure amongst other things. It is a broad brush statement, yes, but table 2 is actually extracted from the joint table 1 of the joint course strategy. It is we've sort of taken what's in there and we sort of put it into the East Northants context. The wording is largely derived from table 1 of the joint course strategy. So yes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, good. Well, Michael, is there anything more on this section?
I think that's every point. Thank you, Mr. Chair, covered in section 4.
So now we've done natural capital and social capital, I think. So we've caught up with ourselves. Yes. Sorry, we're doing this out of order.
Yeah, technology has
indeed
necessitated that.
It'd be easier if we were in a room, but anyway, unfortunately, we're not. So moving then, I think, to section 7, economic prosperity. Who's going to take us through this?
It's me again, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Okay, economic prosperity, right. There, as I say, policies EN 18 to EN 20 provide a focus on protecting existing economic assets, and that's protected employment areas, and also supporting the delivery of the outstanding strategic employment land allocations, and that includes Rushton East. Obviously, we know about the employment there, and also the Rushton Gateway site as well. So I think really the other point of this section, it does differentiate between main town centre uses and other employment and economic uses. Now, this has been complicated by changes to the use classes order, which many members may be aware. I mean, I'm sort of concerned about this at a professional level, because in my reading of it, there's a slight disconnect between what national policy says and what the legislation, the use classes order says. So I mean, we've had to try and work around that in how how we've sort of developed this section. So and really the final section is also talks about the designation of the town centre areas and primary shopping frontages, and also local centres. So really, I'll just take you through some of the key changes. There's quite a bit of additional cross-referencing to SEMLEP strategies and priorities, and we want to give sort of additional information. And there's also recognition for recent projects such as the Enterprise Centre, which has now been up and running for over 6 months, and also the recently consented Chelveston Employment and Innovation Park. So that's really about for section 7. So do you have any questions, members?
Yeah, we've got Councillor Gillian Mercer, please, and then Councillor North, and then Councillor Voles. I've seen you, Jake.
Thank you. Yeah, just a small point. On 7.42, you've got House of Fraser, Marks and Spencer, and Next. I know this is an evolving document, but since they've already closed, it's probably best to put that as Primark.
since you further down in the table you don't mention Next and you do mention Primark, and it's mentioned quite a few times in that table. So I would have suggested, I mean, I should imagine it's just a minor amendment, so I don't think that would cause any problem. The other point I was going to say was we're doing about protecting existing businesses, employment, etc., which is all great. I just wonder, I might have missed it, and it may be saying the joint core strategy, I don't know, but is there anywhere about protecting the removal of the last shop in a village? Because I didn't see it, but I might have missed it.
A short answer to that question, Councillor Mercer. No, there's not in this section. I mean, it is covered in the joint core strategy under policy 7 and also policy 25 as well in the joint core strategy. So I mean, that's really where, first and foremost, those particular policies are already covered. So, but no, this is about the sort of larger portfolio of employment sites, of existing employment areas. That's what this is sort of focused on. I mean, really, the key point to note here is that we've already got enough employment land committed to meet all our strategic requirements. In fact, we're overshooting them by over 3,000 jobs at a rough estimate. It's explained within the policy text, in the supporting text, and then so really, I mean, so really our focus has to be on protecting what our existing employment areas, and that's what this is about.
The only problem with being over the amount is that Bedford might complain.
Well, yes, I mean, I know we are having to engage quite actively with Bedford through the duty to cooperate, and that's a very well made point. Thank you.
Indeed it is, and not just regarding economic matters neither. Okay, Councillor North, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to what Mike was saying about the use classes, with this item and probably 10 as well, with the town centre strategies, I'm just wondering, Chair, whether any plans have gone through examination on similar grounds to us with the use classes changes, and whether he knows whether, and again, I'm not obviously looking to alter anything, I'm just thinking ahead of what might get changed for the modifications, and the concern that Mike and I share those concerns about the changes in relation to the use classes. I just wondered if there's any primary legislation, well, not primary legislation, I just wondered if there's been any plans that have gone through that actually gives an indication where the planning inspectorate is sitting now in relation to this issue, in relation to all local plans that have been going through examination.
Thank you, Councillor North, and that's a very good question. I'm not aware of any, but I suspect my reading of it as, again, my professional knowledge, I think that a planning inspector may well pick that up through for the examination, and it may well be quite a significant topic of discussion. That would be my reading, and I think it should be, if I'm honest. But I think many other plans, many local planning authorities will find ourselves in that particular situation. So I think this is very much a watch this space sort of situation.
Okay, thank you for that. And Kettering and Corby ahead of us, Chair, so we might get some indication of what's going to happen.
Yeah, quite so. Well, Kettering's having a meeting with their planning policy committee tonight with their local plan, so all very interesting. Councillor Voles, please.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of points. Firstly, on page 10, we talk about the Nene Valley Business Park Oundle employment area. That has been identified in the minerals plan. Now, I raised this in the meeting when we had that meeting probably 3 years ago, and that is a business area that is full of businesses, and it is quite separate, distinctly separate from the old recycling centre, the NC Recycling Centre, which they sold to the North Trust and the North Trust own that old recycling centre and the long-term car park, which is on a lease to Oundle Town Council for a period, I guess, of another 8 years. So I do think that needs to be clarified. I think that there is some uncertainty and some misleading area in there. And I would also say that on page 12, I look at, no, sorry, I apologise, not page 12, too many pages here. On page 16, we have a policy EN21. We have on page 18, policy EN21. I'm a little confused.
Thank you, Councillor Vowles. And yes, the second EN21 is a typo. I think Councillor Mercer's already made identified a number of points. I've found other as I've been going back through the document again, and I think we must stress at this point that it was never intended that this should be this was the finished articles. It's very much a sort of bare bones text version. It's really to get the bulk of the documentation right, and but yeah, well spotted, and thank you for that.
Okay. Councillor Maxwell, please. You're muted, Councillor.
Oh.
You're still, yeah, that's it. No, you're coming back. You're still muted.
Right, sorry. Right, just a couple of, I think, mistakes. It could be, I could be wrong here. So on page 5, you've got Primark 1,300 jobs. Well, that is definitely not the case. Mm-hmm. On page 11, you've got House of Fraser. Well, they've gone. Yeah. So maybe that should be deleted. And the other, what was the other issue? No, I'll leave. No, I'm just trying to think. No, it's just those two actually that oh yes, the third point was, have you got a section on how we create high-end jobs?
Yeah, and the short answer to that is, Councillor Maxwell, yes. The first part of the section is very much geared around the SEMLEP strategic priorities. So I'd refer you to paragraph 7.9 to 7.14.
Okay.
In fact, to 7.16. I mean, there's quite a lot of information in there. I think on that point about Primark, the figure that figure was derived from the planning permission or the planning application, the information that's provided at the time. Do you have an idea of the number of jobs that are there rather than 1,300? I mean, that was where the information was derived from.
Yeah, well, I think actually there's only about 100 jobs there.
Oh.
Well,
there is, because it's completely automated. It's the front office which is there, which actually sort out the computer side, you know, the automation of it. I mean, I will clarify it for you.
That would be.
That isn't. Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councillor Max. I think there is a point. That is a very good point, and I think that I would tend to agree that could be a factual update. But yeah. The background paper does actually explain the sources for all of those numbers of jobs. So I think that's all. So it's done with the best information that we had.
We don't want to get people thinking, oh wow, and then in fact it's not there. So I will check it out for you.
Okay, well, don't forget that it is a 24/7 operation, so there are several shifts that operate in there. It isn't just the few people that you see whenever you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, it's something to
I'll
discuss.
check it out for you.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
thank you.
It needs to be checked out. It does need an evidence base. Richard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's a number of detailed comments which we can take on board, as Mike's just said, through the recommendation 3 in the report. That they are quite detailed comments. I mean, the plan does reflect a point in time. We can't keep updating everything, but obviously we'll pick up what you raise. You know, we can offer you the opportunity if you want to put comments through outside of this that are minor comments such as that won't, you know, with due respect, won't change the strategy or the policy. We can pick those up. We've got a limited time if you agree the outcome of the report tonight, because as I say, we would like to get to the regulation 19 by a week on Friday, which isn't very long to do all the work we need to do in addition to getting the documents ready. We will be looking through the plan further because, you know, everything does evolve. No doubt between submitting the plan and the examination, things will change as well. I suppose the question would be, you know, how much that actually impacts on the policy and the strategy of the plan, because the point of the plan at the end of the day is to bring you policies which you can apply to planning applications. Some of the background builds towards that context, but some of that detail obviously isn't going to change the policy itself. So it's your policies which are key here. But by all means, if we can pick up issues that can be changed, we will do so. But I think it is just thinking on the impact of the policies, really. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Richard. Now, Councillor Boto had his hand up, I think, or indicated he wanted to speak.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, on page 19.7.71, I think you correctly identified London Road and Worth Park Lawns as a local centre. Yeah. Now, I'm mentioning it here because a bit later on in section 10, we seem to have split away the Worth Park bit from the bit where McDonald's is and the BP petrol station is, and so on and so forth. I do think the whole Worth Park is not really a local centre. What is a local centre, in my view, is Asda, the Enterprise Centre, KFC on one side of the road, and BP and McDonald's on the other side of the road. And I think we need to get these descriptions quite right. What it really is, I think, because the rest of Worth Park, all the warehousing is not really a local centre. That's part of an industrial housing site, warehousing site. What we've really got is a bit of a hub is round the Raunds roundabout, basically, with businesses which aren't warehouses, which are shops or petrol stations or enterprise centre, etc. That's really the hub part of it rather than the other bit. So I just think when we get this finally put together, put to bed, we need to tighten up this description in 7.71. And I'll come back again. You'll see what I mean in section 10, where we again got a rather loose and scruffy description of that area. It would be a topographical correction, so it's not a major change. So no, I was just saying the definition. In the interest of consistency, though. Yeah. Okay, Michael, you. Yeah. Sorry.
Can I come back to Councillor Boat on that point? That's a very good point. I mean, I think if it would help, and I wouldn't consider this to be a material change. I mean, would it perhaps be better if we called it something like the London Road hub or the Michael Way hub, because obviously that's that new road that where Asda and the Enterprise Centre and KFC are. Problem with that is obviously we also want to count the McDonald's etc. as well, and potentially where the football club is. So I mean, I think, you know, perhaps if we rather than call it Worth Park, I know we've tended to call it that that was previously known, the bulk of it was known as Plot 1 of Worth Park, but for my part I think there may be a good case to rebrand it the London Road hub. I don't know, would anyone else have any views on that? Or
well, I think London Road Michael Way hub would sound better. And make it more of a hub than it's all a bit scruffy at the moment because it's two separate developments either side of the shortest dual carriageway in the world. So it's
so
okay.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. Well, that's the section. Is there anything else on this section before we move on? Splendid. Well, we may make it before midnight yet, but don't count on it. Let's now move to friendly section 8, all about housing delivery. And is it you again, Michael? You're looking
Yes,
eager for the fun.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's me again. Okay. The section 8 is roughly split into 3 main sections. The first section is housing requirements, and that's really the key. There is the residual requirements for Rushton, Irthlingborough and Oundle, and that's on the basis of the latest housing land supply figures that were presented to the Planning Policy Committee on the 8th of June. Arising from that, we come to the second part, and that's the site allocations. That's the 4 strategic sites. That's the 3 sites at Oundle that Councillor Val's previously mentioned, 2 of which are already consented. And then there's also the Bedford Road site as well, which is an additional site that's needed to meet the requirements and address the shortfalls, well, for Rushton and Irthlingborough. And then really on that then is on to the third section is about the sort of specialist housing. It includes wheelchair accessible housing, older people's housing, self and custom build housing as well. So really the key changes are largely, and the policies haven't so much been changed in terms of the detail, but they have been reordered and somewhat, and that's where a big change has been made. And then on self and custom build housing, we've sort of rejigged the policy to distinguish between self build, which is your individual plots, and custom house building, which is potentially what the sort of volume house builders could be in a position to deliver. And then finally, perhaps on a controversial matter, but is the Gypsy and Traveller assessment update, which was undertaken in 2019. But on that particular issue, there's no significant need to make any provision for gypsies and travellers through this plan, though that may well change when we go to a review of the strategic plan under the new unitary. But any questions on section 8?
Okay, well, that's yes. Thank you, Jake. I've seen you. Councillor Mercer first, please.
Thank you. As you might imagine, I've got a couple of questions on this one. First of all, you mentioned in quite a few places about Irthlingborough West. I'm just a little bit concerned about whether that can influence the whole sort of soundness business, because and you've actually said on page 3 that there's uncertainty of whether this can go ahead. So that's just a sort of comment. I'll just a bit slightly concerned about that. I know I sent in sort of changes or updates where the numbers are wrong, and I've picked, obviously they'll be picked up, and other spelling mistakes, etc. But there was just one 8.9 in the centre there where it says Rushton 376 dwellings. I think that should be 306, and that might get missed.
That was paragraph
8.9, yeah. It says outstanding residual housing requirements have been identified at Rushton 376 dwellings. I might be wrong, but I think that should.
Yeah, I'd have to double check on that. I know I'm going to have to do. I know that when we first did the plan, it was on the basis of the 2018 figures. We've obviously updated them to 2019, but yeah, I will certainly have a check, a double check on that.
That one.
It's,
the other thing is in policy EN 28. Obviously, this is the new area M6. Quite happy obviously about that as we pass that. I just wondered how, when we put these points in these plans, whether that affects the planning process, because we've said about in here at C, vehicular access to be directly from the Bedford Road A6 bypass. Well, that's saying that's going to be 450 houses with one access. I don't know whether that sort of, does that influence what happens when the planning application comes in, if you know, it should be seen that, you know, that's not sufficient number of accesses.
Well, I mean, obviously, an answer to that, Councillor Mercer. Yes, I mean, it's the it would be a guide. I mean, currently the only possible access is from Bedford Road. So I mean, that's, you know, it could be, at the moment it's probably proposed for a single access, but even if there were to be another access, it would still be off Bedford Road. I think Richard also might want to come in at this point.
Richard? Yes, I can, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Mercer, we've been in contact and discussion with the promoter and developer of the site. So whilst they have agreed that they will produce a master plan in more detail for the site in line with the policy, you know, we are aware that they've undertaken a number of consultations and discussion documents. So they've been in touch with Highways, for example, about what's possible. So, you know, we've built the policy around some of the discussions that we've had, both with Highways and with the site developer as well. So what we've got in the policy is what we understand to be factually correct. So, you know, that's what we will retain in the policy. Clearly, there's been not just that, there's been representation from the developer in respect of the policy which we put out recently to consultation, and nothing's come up in relation to that. You know, it is in line with the expectations. So, you know, that is, as things stand, that's the correct point.
Okay, just pointing that out.
No, that's fine. It's fine. I hope my explanation will give you satisfaction on that.
I know it's not my area, but in the Codstock Road on 8.29, it mentions access arrangements in with, you know, the considerations have to be drainage, odour, etc. But in the policy itself, the only part that relates to access is the public rights of way, and obviously there were these worries about visibility, speed limits, etc. I'm just surprised that nothing was put in about that.
Yeah, again, through you, Chair, I mean, what we've done with Oundle, I mean, policy EN24, which precedes those three individual sites, gives some overview on policy. So criterion A on that will give you the key considerations. It talks about transport impact. So looking at those policies, you would need to look at EN24 as well, and that hopefully will give you more of an overview on the requirements.
Yeah, no problem. It's just a, you know, I just wasn't sure if that was an omission. And the only other point I'll make is rather concerning, and it's nothing to do with, you know, the policies or anything, about on table 20 on page 18, a deficit of 2,267 properties for older persons by 2035. Where on earth are they all going to come from?
Well, good question. I'm not going to pretend I know the answer, but it's similar with affordable housing, really. Sometimes
none of us are already here.
Cut me off mid-prime there. there are you know, there are targets which obviously we try and do our best through the policies, but there are some targets that are going to be very difficult to meet in the future of the immediate plan. And indeed, you know, you try to make an impression as best as you can, but realistically, there will still be outstanding requirements after that.
Sure.
One thing I would ask, if I could come back on, Chair, because I think Councillor Mercer picked up on the Irthing West, which was an important point which we haven't responded to, and I think for clarity we ought to. Yeah, it may not come forward. It may not be a viable site. Obviously, there are issues still with the 106 agreement, which has not been completed. Each year when we do the trajectory, that had been moved further and further back, and that was one of the reasons why we brought forward the potential for additional development, which started off, of course, with the Rushden Lakes West site, and because of the objection from Natural England, eventually became the land to the east of the A6 Bedford Road. That was really to partly replace the uncertainty of that site and the ability of it to come forward through, you know, through the planned period, you know, it wasn't a 5-year land supply issue and doesn't, it currently isn't. But if you don't provide the requirements, the minimum requirements up to the planned period, it does become an issue later in the plan. So that's really, you know, we putting the additional site in has really given us some wriggle room, for want of a better term, for the fact that if that doesn't come forward, it's something I think need to be looked at again through the review of the strategic plan, because that's where it emanates from anyway. But certainly we are covered on that, and we don't feel it to be an issue that would give us undue concern through examination. So hopefully, again, that gives you some satisfaction in terms of the response.
Well, thank you, because it is an identified site. It has been for a long time, and obviously we just have these viability issues at this stage.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Councillor Vols, please. I've seen you, Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Chairman. It won't surprise you that obviously that I am wholly and utterly opposed to the site selection for the Oundle area. There were 297 responses to the consultation, totaling about 3,000 different responses. 70% of them for Oundle, saying they didn't want those sites. And incidentally, only 3 people said they wanted those sites, and obviously you know the names of those 3 people, Persimmon, Gadman and Wilson. But there were significant objections from both Anglian Water and NCC Highways to both those sites. Okay, there's Water Under Bridge. Officer chose those sites, but people of townsfolk of Oundle do not think that you have considered the reasonable alternatives, and I think that that is quite a significant difficulty for this plan when it goes forward. I'd like a little honesty though under it's 8.30. So it talks about St Christopher's Drive, and it says self-contained greenfield site adjacent to the existing built-up area, surrounded on 3 sides by urban land uses, residential, educational and employment. Actually, it's 45% of the boundary is road and bridleway, 32% is playing fields, and just 23% is development. I think that, as that is there, please, that is a little misleading. It is not in the middle of a housing area, it's adjacent to a built-up area, but it's very much an extension to it. And it's not surrounded by houses. It's got the 605, a bridleway and a playing field, and they make up 75% of the boundary. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to come back on that? Or no? Okay, points made. Right, Councillor Maxwell, please.
I've just got a comment actually. So on page 15, where you got in 8.58, that sentence there, which is good. Don't get me wrong, it's very good. That there should be larger houses, higher value houses. Is there a possibility of putting self-built there? Because self-built, you've got a lot more people now converting barns in the area, and I think we should encourage self-build anyway, but I think barn conversions are on the increase. I don't know whether that was a possibility in putting it in 8.58.
Well, there is a policy on self and custom build housing.
No. Okay.
EN 32 on page 23.
Sorry. Page.
There is on page 23.
Oh,
EN
yeah, sorry.
32. There is a specific policy on self-build and custom housing.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Splendid.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem. Any other comments or questions? Okay. And we do indeed note the discontent of Oundle members in the site selections, but that's where we are. Right. So if that's that then finishes section 8. We now move to section 9, which is delivering sustainable urban extensions, of which we have not a few. Who's on for this? Is this Michael again?
Yeah, sorry, it's I'm afraid it's me again.
Are we taking you to the end so I don't have to?
No, Anne's presenting the section 10 on the town strategy.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Just to speak briefly on this, members may already be aware the detailed wording was actually agreed by the last Planning Policy Committee for this new section in respect to Rushden East. This is obviously, it's a new section we're bringing into in order to provide a policy hook for the master plan framework document to bring it all under the umbrella of the local plan part 2. Now we've also added some text regarding Irthlingborough West in response to Councillor Mercer's earlier point, but it's very much a position statement. It's saying that we'd like to see this still, we as a council still support this site coming forward. It's written into the joint core strategy already. It is an existing commitment, and we hope to give a little bit more pointer as to exactly where we are with Irthlingborough West, but that's really, I think, the function of this. It's just really to give the policy hooks for for Rushden East and a bit more information and clarity regarding Irthlingborough West. So that's all I need to say on that. Questions?
I think it's useful to bring up Irthlingborough West and actually have it set it in context, because it is a difficult site, but we don't want to abandon it completely. Right, are there any questions on these two items, on this item? Councillor Jenny, please. You're muted, sir. You're still muted. You're on mute, David. That's better. No, you're back on mute.
No, the space bar wasn't working for some reason. Just following on from your comments about Irthlingborough West, just want to be clear what the risks are with non-delivery of Irthlingborough West in relation to housing numbers. We've got 750 houses, I think, sitting there, which technically can be built, but there's going to be quite a significant on cost for actually sorting out the water courses underneath there. And in practical terms, it's probably not going to happen. I mean, it's been hanging around since consent was given, what, 5-6 years ago now, I suppose, something like that. Just want to be careful that we're not going to prejudice our 5-year land supply by relying on this.
Okay, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll just give an overview. I'm sure Mike will be able to give exact figures because I know he works very closely on the land supply figures. But no, in terms of delivery of the site, a lot of it sits outside the plan period anyway, and more of that is becoming the case each year when we update the trajectories. So I think it's fair to say we're not relying on that site coming forward. We know that the viability is in question. We've never had that formalised, if you like, but there are difficulties with the Section 106 agreement, which has never been signed, and it is, as you say, Councillor Jenny, several years old perhaps now, and I guess would need a complete revision if that was to, well, if and when that came back. So that again would add to issues relating to viability potentially. I don't know, it depends on the content of it, but it certainly would need to be revised. So in short, the answer is no, we're not relying on that site coming forward to make the numbers for the plan, and certainly shouldn't have a 5-year supply issue because of what we've done in relation to the land east of the A6 Bedford Road. Didn't know if you want to add any detail, Mike, but I think that probably covers the main issue there.
Yeah, I think you have, Rich. Thank you. I think that the key issue is that I think it's drawn to attention in the table, in the first table in the new section, that sort of says that originally, obviously, when the Joint Core Strategy was adopted, it was in the trajectory for 700 dwellings, and that's now been scaled back to just 250 within the current plan period. So that's exactly as Rich has already explained why we've brought the Bedford Road site in. It's just really predominantly to cover that gap, and also acts as sort of additional safeguard against further slippages with Rushden East as well. So I mean that's really where we are with this, but we're confident. I think the figure that we've quoted, if you take account of the additional housing land such as federal estates we've got at Higham Ferrers, the overall figure for Rushden, Higham Ferrers and Irthlingborough is 385 dwellings, and a set of which, and that's what the Bedford Road is designed to cover. So that's more than covers that 385 dwellings shortfall that we had. So that's the context for the Bedford Road site.
Mm-hmm. And also, by the time this plan is adopted, any such changes would become a matter for the future unitary authority to sort out in due course, as the leader, Councillor North, just pointed out on the chat. Okay. Is there anything else on this item? Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we'll give your voice and your bandwidth a moment to recuperate, Michael, and we'll now move to town strategies. And Anne, would you like to jump in?
Yes, town strategies, which is section 10. As a result of representations received, there have been some factual changes and some updates to this section, one of which I've just noted from Councillor Boto with the new London Road Michael Way hub, which I've noted includes Asda, KFC, the petrol station, McDonald's and the football club around the roundabout. If there's any change to that, Councillor Boto, I'm sure you'll let me know. But moving on from those changes, policy EN33 from the draft plan is now policy EN34, and this sets out the guiding principles for town centre reimagination projects. Policies 35 to 42 cover site-specific brownfield sites in the 6 towns to provide opportunities for future growth and investment. As the JCS sets out a general presumption in favour of the reuse of suitable previously developed land, and this plan provides the further direction and sets out how town centres need to evolve to meet the challenges and be fit for purpose in the 21st century. At the last PPC, we gave details of the way forward for planning policy beyond the local plan part 2, and this has set the scene for more targeted work on the regeneration of our town centres. This chapter sets out the guiding principles for enhancing and or maintaining their vitality and viability. So other than that, there are no major changes. Are there any questions?
Yes, there are. Councillor Boto, please.
Yes, thank you. And that proposal of yours will actually tidy the whole thing up in relation to hubs and facial diagrams, etc. It would just mean that on page 19, table 25, Worth Park would now stay as Worth Park because it's mainly warehousing anyway, and you need to move your Michael's Way into Vaughan's North, and then that links up nicely with the 3rd bullet point and the description as you just made it. That ties the whole thing up, so I'll be quite pleased with that.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Boto. That's great. Okay,
okay, that seems neat. Okay, I've got Councillor Mercer, then I've got Councillor Voles, then I've got Councillor Lewis. So I've seen you all. Councillor Mercer, please.
Thank you. You've picked up on a couple of the changes that were suggested in the sort of update sheet, taking out direct on policy EN 36, so that's good. And I also pointed out that there was already a crossing off Rectory Road, so policy EN 37D, but you said that there doesn't state there needs to be a new crossing, so I'm happy with that. If you're, okay, that doesn't actually affect it. I did miss one earlier on. I thought in my notes it was in section 10 and it was actually in section 8. It was in policy EN 31 C2. It mentions allocated sites for older persons, and it mentions Hayway, Northampton Road. I wasn't sure what that meant. Sorry, was that Hayway? I was reading it as Hayway, Northampton Road, Hayway being the memorial clinic, I assumed. And I'm not sure if the Northampton Road means the Rushton Gateway. I didn't know whether that was clear enough of where that was, because it says allocated sites St Christopher's Drive, Oundle, and Hayway, Northampton Road, Rushton. So I'm not quite sure which ones that meant, because obviously there's a care home in the Gateway, in the, in these proposal in the strategic plan, etc. And the Hayway, and unless that was, because it is near the Hayway, so I wasn't quite sure what that meant.
I think Mike's coming back on that one.
I can answer it. I'm looking back, and it is actually a site that's allocated in the Rushton neighbourhood plan. It's actually the allocated Hayway site. I think it's Hayway/Bramble site, but it is already, and there is actually a footnote that actually highlights the policy. It's policy H2F of the neighbourhood plan. That's why I think this policy all the sites are actually already committed or allocated. So I think, and that's to an extent how this policy fits. So I hope that addresses that point.
Okay, yes, it's just a clarification.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Bowles, please.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things that I have already mentioned to planning policy, again, 2-3 years ago, and thought would have been taken up. The first one is regards on 1060. It talks about the recycling centre occupied by North Equipment, owned by North Trust of the North family. Although the former car park included within the land holdings remains unused. That is absolute rubbish. It is full every market day. It is 70% full every day of the week. And very often those cars can't get in there and they're parking on the yellow lines on the road outside. I have said that before. It would be nice if that could be brought up to speed, please. The other thing on the same page regards the Riverside Hotel. The owner for that has plans. He's talked regularly to the head of planning services, I understand, and he's about to submit plans, and they don't include some of the somewhat esoteric things like training centres and burger bars and sorts of things that have been mentioned. The second thing I'd like to comment on, which confuses me again, is on page 15. There is an EN 40, former Rushton Endowments. And on page 23, there's another EN 40, which is a cattle market in Thrapston. Perhaps that should be 42. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody like to comment on any of that?
I think on the final point, Councillor, about the renumbering, yes, I mean I think there are a number of issues. We try to pick things up as we've gone along, but obviously now we're in a position, hopefully after this committee's met, we can go for it more systematically. I think we try to pick things cross-referencing up as we've gone along, but yes, I mean, as Councillor Mercer's already mentioned, we've missed some bits in, with the sheer volume of information, but I mean I think I mean, if there are any sort of factual updates, such as Councillor Vowles has mentioned, then I mean, we can, you know, we can happily, you know, we can bring those sort of details into the plan because they don't materially affect policy content. As factual update, we can bring it in. So I mean, we're happy, you know, say to an extent. We try to pick things up, but yes, I mean, many ward members on their patches will know things that perhaps we wouldn't necessarily have picked up, and that's part of the point. That's why it's such a collaborative effort. This, but
thank you for that.
Yes,
I mean,
we're happy.
I raised it now is that I raised it 3 years ago and it didn't get changed. It's the same word for word as it was last time we discussed it. So I think that's a good thing.
Well, I mean, I think all I'll say really is. I mean, if you've got, you know, if you've got a sort of suggested wording, then please, obviously, push it in our direction. If you know, if that would help. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Well, Councillor Lewis, you've been very patient.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it comes with old age, I suppose.
True.
Yes, I mean, my general comment is, you know, speaking of Rushton here. Then yes, I mean, one can feel quite sort of optimistic about a lot of the comments in here, and I sincerely hope, you know, that these points move forward positively with this new authority. The worry is that what's been happening in the town centre in Rushton for a long time is drip feed building of flats, and as I've said in planning meetings, we consider each application in its own right, not as an overall picture. And I do hope that this document helps with some sort of more overall picture as opposed to the way things have gone. But, you know, I remain an optimist. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. And before we go to Councillor Maxwell, I noticed that it's 20:56. And we're nearly at the 2 hours. I'm sorry we didn't quite sneak it within the quarter of an hour, but may I have a proposer to extend the meeting, please? Thank you. And a seconder. Thank you. All those in favour? Are there any against? None that are commenting anyway. Okay, that's carried. We can extend the meeting. Thank you. Councillor Maxwell, please.
I just have a question, actually. It's on page 6, and it's got policy EN 35, Splashpool and Wilkinson sites redevelopment. Am I right in thinking that you then turn the page to page 7, that the splash pool is going to be redeveloped, or am I wrong in that? Or, yeah, is that going to be redeveloped? Is that?
It's a site that has been identified for the possibility as a brownfield site for redevelopment. As yet, this is just will be sitting in the policy.
Right.
Should this come along, there is a policy to cover this. It's been identified.
And does that mean you're going to build a new swimming pool for us then?
If I can jump in on that, Chair, yeah. Yes, if you read 10.20 of the supporting text above it, that Councillor Maxwell, that gives some context to the policy.
Right. Okay.
It says, yeah, the release of the splash pool will be dependent upon the development of replacement facilities. So yeah, that will be the case. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Richard.
Are there any more on this section? Town strategies? There are not. Well, we are actually making progress. And now we come to an important section, but it is perhaps less locally specific, but it is the monitoring and implementation section. And who's going to take us into that?
Is that Mike again, I think?
I think with that one, Chair, there wasn't any policies in there, we're not really going to sort of bring that one to your attention. I mean, it's not a lot to say on it, to be honest. So,
well, it says what it says, and highlights some key infrastructure projects and all the various supporting texts and performance indicators. Okay.
We can give an overview if you'd like, Chair.
No, well, hang on, it's okay. Councillor Bowles is about to jump in.
Chairman, back on the same subject again, I'm afraid. I mean, this is a wonderful document, monitoring and implementation, but only about 10 of the numbers are right. All the other numbers have moved on or duplicated, or there's some missed out. There's no number 40 Russian endowments in here, which there is in another document. So it really does want bring this document actually is hardly worth reading because it's got a lot of work to be done to tidy it up.
Okay, I think that point's well made. We do have to get our numbers right. Michael?
Yeah, Councillor Vowles, yes, and well spotted, I would say on that. But if you read the addendum report, we've actually flagged up where we need to sort of realign the policies. So yes, I think a big chunk of the addendum report does actually cover that particular point. But yes, it is a point well made, and I realised after the document had already gone to print that that was something that I hadn't picked up on. It had been updated at various points in the past, but we hopefully now we've resolved it through the addendum item.
Okay, thank you. And obviously there is the recommendation at 3 to delegate non-material typographical formatting, mapping and other minor amendments to the Head of Planning Services in consultation with myself and the Vice Chairman. Richard, you wanted to speak?
Yes, please, Chair. Yeah, obviously there are a lot of detailed comments from members, which we that's the point of the meeting to understand that. I mean, I would, on behalf of the team, like to say that, it has been difficult circumstances that we've been working under remotely, working on small laptops. So I do apologise that there are some errors in there that perhaps wouldn't have been made in different circumstances. We are working under a tight timescale. And I have to say that it's been excellent that members have looked in detail at this plan, and I must say thank you to Councillor Mercer because she's put forward some detailed comments at each stage, and we've been able to work with those. And I think something Mike alluded to earlier is it's the plan for all of us. So we do our best to take on board everything. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult because if you can send wording over, it very much helps us because it is the interpretation from different members when we're getting things raised, and quite often we're scrambling around on little tables with a lot of paper. And we don't want to miss the comments that you make, but we may sometimes slightly get those wrong. But certainly we don't want to do that. So if you can send things through, it will help us because we've got quite a tight turnaround to get out to Regulation 19 on a week on Friday. We've got quite a bit to do. So please do send those through as email. It will help both of us, all of us rather, to be able to make sure we get everything correct because we've got the Regulation 19, but what we said we would do during now the publication or the submission of the plan to the Planning Inspectorate. There's a lot of things that we will do to polish this plan up, the diagrams and all the presentational aspects. And what you're seeing at the moment is a final draft that hopefully we will sign off tonight. But it's not there yet in terms of its polishing, and we will continue to work on that. So we thank you for those comments, and please help us to work with those, really, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for your comments because I think that is important to set what we're trying to do in context. Okay, we've actually done our gallop through the text. Does anybody else have any comments they would like to make? Yes, Councillor Maxwell.
Well, I'd like to say actually, I'm really impressed that you've got a glossary at the back which actually explains terminology when you're not actually familiar. So I have to say that's great. Thank you.
Well, it's not an easy thing to come into planning policy, so any of the guidance and glossary and help that can be provided is always welcome for all of us. So thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Well made point. Councillor Vowles, please.
Appendix 5, I don't know whether you're planning to go through it. Just a simple comment. On page 4, we've got the dates are wrong for the consultation. I'm sure that will be picked up, but be wrong not to mention it. It's got them down straight Friday the 6th of November to the 21st of December 2020.
Okay. Yes, I mean that's fine. I'm sure. I note that Councillor Mercer has said that she has some other detailed changes which will be sent through. So what happens tonight if we approve the recommendation is that the planning policy team are all going to have to work like beavers to incorporate the changes on the mere 119 pages in Appendix 5 and the comments that have been made this evening as well, which are not taken into account in Appendix 5, so that we are able to go to Reg 19 consultation with a clear document, and obviously then submit that document with the Reg 19 representations to our friends for Secretary of State. So Councillor North, just before we get to the recommendations, would like to make a quick comment.
Well, Chair, I mean, I can wait till we get to the recommendations, Chair. I just did, if you were taking them on block, I've just got clarification. So if I can wait till you're wrapping up, if you like.
Well, let's turn, I mean, no, hang on, Councillor Voles, please.
Sorry, before you take the resolutions,
yeah,
I think I must say that I sought to join this council because I believe in local democracy. The Localism Act enshrines the importance of community engagement. What has happened in Oundle has not involved the community. These documents state that officers have a duty of to cooperate with the local community and take into account reasonable alternatives. There's been little meaningful engagement between Oundle Town Council, and I believe the draft falls on these. I'm sorry to say this because I do wholeheartedly believe in the local plan, but I will vote against it tonight on the grounds that Oundle was discriminated against. It was not taken, reasonable alternatives were not taken into account, and I will obviously include that in my submission to the Planning Inspectorate and Public Examination. I believe in the local plan, but I don't think that Oundle has been treated very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. And obviously, we do understand where you're coming from on this, and it's been subject to discussion for a long time. So yeah, thank you. Okay, does anybody else have anything to say before we pass on to the recommendations? Okay, right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, at 13.0, we have a recommendation that it is recommended that the committee, 1, being satisfied that the preparation of a local plan has complied with the relevant regulatory requirements, and being of the view Regulation 19 pre-submission local plan is ready for submission to the government for independent examination, endorses the decision to approve the Reg 19 pre-submission local plan for consultation. We can do this en bloc or individually. Councillor North, you want to do your clarification?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I'm sure you know what I'm going to say anyway. As you're aware, Chair, obviously I'm chair of the Rushden East Project Board, and obviously we have now included the framework framework document into the local plan to give it added strength, and of course we consulted on that as well, Chair, and obviously that is now part of the local plan. So as per we did on the meeting on the 10th of December, you'll note that at the last point when we did the delegation, you added myself as chair of the Rushden East Project Board, not as leader of the council, to that delegation, certainly in relation to the Rushden Sue master plan document, just to make sure there's any non-minor alterations that included in that delegation. So I have absolutely trust in yourselves as chair and vice chair and officers, but if you'd like to include me again in that delegation, so in relation to the Rushden master framework document, for any minor alterations, that would be appreciated, if that's okay with you.
Okay. Well, in that case, what we're going to do is we will take the 3 items individually. and we can amend the item. We amend the third recommendation. So recommendation 1, as I've just read out, to submit the local plan to the government for independent examination is endorsing the decision to approve a Reg 19 pre-submission local plan for consultation. May I have a proposer, please? I have it, and a second.
Yeah.
Thank you. And seconder, lovely. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
All those against?
Against.
Thank you. That's noted. And are there any abstentions? That recommendation is carried. Recommendation 2. Following the conclusion of the Regulation 19 consultation period, the committee agrees the submission of the local plan to the Secretary of State for independent examination, together with the submission documents prescribed by Regulation 22 of the 2012 regulations by the 31st of March 2021, unless matters arising from the consultation raise issues of fundamental significance in respect of the strategy of the plan. May I have a proposer, please?
Proposed, Chair.
Thank you. And a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
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 Those against? Are there any abstentions?
Aye.
Thank you. The recommendation is carried. And now recommendation 3, which will be slightly amended. The committee delegates any non-material, typographical, formatting, mapping and other minor amendments to the plan as required prior to the submission of the plan to the Secretary of State, to the Head of Planning Services in consultation with the Chair and Deputy Chair of the Planning Policy Committee, and to the Chairman of the Rushden East Project Board as may be appropriate. Do I have a proposer, please?
Chairman, yeah.
I propose.
Thank you. And seconded?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any against? Are there any abstentions? The recommendation is carried.
Thank you, Chair.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the business of this evening's meeting. As normal, I would like to thank all you members for your patience and for your scrutiny on this highly complicated, highly technical matter. I'd like to thank the officers and the team and the public speakers who have contributed to the meeting. It's been a remarkably, interesting meeting. A very, I think we've chewed over a lot of areas. So I'm very grateful to you all. Thank you very much. The next meeting of the Planning Policy Committee is anticipated to be on the 8th of February and will, in all normal circumstances, be the last meeting of this committee. So I'm extremely grateful to all of you for your patience over so many years. Many of you have been on this committee, and the contribution made by people who are perhaps newer onto the committee, who have certainly made their contribution very much felt and very much appreciated. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I declare the meeting closed.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Bye.
Bye. Bye then. Goodbye.
Good night then.
We're still live.